And welcome to the regular public meeting of the Cowlitz County Board. It is the 18th of July, pretty close to 9 a.m. Would you, if you're able to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this point, let's just get the minutes out of the way.
Mr. Chairman, I've reviewed the minutes. They seem to be in order. I move their adoption for last week's meetings.
Any comments from anybody? Remember, the public does not need to identify themselves at all. And if you are online, just raise your hand and hopefully I'll get to see that. Seeing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
I also vote aye. The minutes pass. At this point in time, I'd like to take a moment for a PSA, a personal public service announcement by our auditor, who I think should
Just came on.
Ah, there we are. Good morning, Carolyn. This is Carolyn Fundingsland, the best auditor in the nation, not just the state.
Good morning. I appreciate, again, an opportunity to share some elections information with you, get a little free advertising. So this is a really great opportunity in the mornings to share information. So Elections is hosting their annual open house next week, and we have two dates. The 25th, Tuesday, July 25th, is reserved for the public. So anybody that has any questions about the process, our security measures, please attend. Call us. You can just walk in, but space is limited, and we like to keep group sizes for the tours kind of even. So appointments are encouraged, but not required. But we'd love to have you. I appreciate the time.
And I'd like to add, and I think that my colleague would also agree, all elections are important. While this is kind of what we'd call an off-year election, there's some big issues that are on the ballot.
Absolutely.
Yep.
These local positions that you're voting on this year, they don't get a lot of publicity, but they have the most impact on your daily lives. These are our local taxes, school bonds that affect your property tax values, fire district levies, school board members, the decisions that they're making regarding your children in schools. They have the most direct impact on your daily lives.
And to make a great impact over the nation, imagine if we had an 85% turnout for an off-year election, we'd be on the front page of the New York Times. So don't forget that.
So I was recently quoted in the paper. I will let you know that I am trying to get out of the business of making turnout predictions because I have been so wrong recently. So my prediction was I will provide you the average turnout of the last 4 odd year primaries. And it was like 21%. Bad, really bad. And we're starting off slow, I'll say.
Oh, I just turned my ballot in this morning.
That'll make all the difference.
You lead by example, right?
Yes. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Mr. Weber.
Well, good morning. We have our consent agenda to review at this point. Our first item is an interagency agreement with the state of Washington's Office of Financial Management to agreeing to acquire land that may be necessary should the Army Corps of Engineers decide to dredge the Cowlitz. This is an agreement that we've been renewing off and on since 1985, when Congress set flood protection in the Cowlitz Valley as a national priority. The state will give us the money to acquire the land. They just recognize that we have the best connection with the local landowners. And there have been a number who've approached me in the last several years saying, well, we did it before and we still have land that's available. So let us know if you get to that point. This just keeps current the appropriations at the state to acquire property and authorizes us to go ahead and act on their behalf. The second agreement is with Advanced Electrical Technologies, and this is for electrical services at the Headquarters Landfill. That operation is undergoing important communication upgrades so that it's, as the landfill grows, they have to have the capacity to continue to communicate from the headquarters, from the office up there at headquarters to the various positions at the landfill, as well as upgrading computer services. We've workshopped that with staff up to $150,000. They don't really expect to need that much, but we've also learned that there are delays that drive costs up sometimes. The next two agreements refer to arrangements for providing oversight for opioid abatement. Cowlitz County, as well as most cities and counties in the state, are receiving awards, court awards, based on two major lawsuits filed against the manufacturers of opioids, who promised everybody 20 years ago that the opioids that they were manufacturing are not addictive. And of course, we know how that ended up being so wrong. So we're going to be getting in money over the next 17 years in varying amounts, and it'll be up to us to design the programs to kind of abate the costs that those addictions caused. But there is this agency that has oversight to make sure that we are doing it the right way. There's a whole list of different strategies that we have to follow. And we'll be getting recommendations, I believe, from our Department of Health, Social and Health Services, outlining that. It's two different agreements because the courts ordered a regional approach. And within that regional approach, there's going to be a local committee that'll take care of overseeing what goes on in Cowlitz County, in collaboration with Pacific County and Grays Harbor County and the city of Longview and Kelso are all involved in the subgroup. We have a series of letters and notices, including a retirement letter for Deputy Brad Bauman, who's retiring. And that's really hard for me personally. He was a student of mine when he was in high school. They're starting to retire on me now. We also have a letter reappointing Rodman, or appointing Mericka Rodman to the Building and Planning Advisory Committee. She's a realtor, also serves on the Planning Commission. That'll provide some good synergies between those two groups. We also have a letter to Dudley, appointing him to the Veterans Advisory Board, and Elizabeth Daly, appointing her to the Parks and Recreation Board. And we've received a letter from the Cowlitz County Boundary Review Board regarding an annexation that nobody challenged out on Ocean Beach Highway, a single lot, about 4,500 block that connects with the city limits of Longview and goes to Ocean Beach Highway. And that will be, since nobody challenged it, that'll be approved. And then we have claims and vouchers totaling a little over $2.44 million, including several payroll items. And that concludes the consent agenda.
So at this point, let me just say one thing. The letter to Charles Woodrow Dudley, AKA Woody, is approved here if we approve the consent agenda, and that I think is all good. But what he doesn't know is that his first meeting is this afternoon. So in case you know where he is, make sure he shows up. Are there any further comments or statements from anybody? Not seen any.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve today's consent agenda as presented.
Again, last opportunity for comments. Seeing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion does pass. Thank you. We now go on to the motion items. The first motion item is from our HHS department. And Gina James, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Gina James, Health and Human Services. This contract is a little bit different than our normal contracts. It's with the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services. This is what is called the General Terms and Conditions contract. So this is the sort of the boilerplate standard contract language that comes to us from the state. This contract doesn't have any money or scope of works connected to it. It's just that boilerplate language. There are various program agreements that the county sometimes engages with that would apply, that would be connected to these general terms and conditions. So for example, HHS typically works with the Developmental Disabilities Administration for our adult employment and day program services. That contract, that program agreement would be connected to these general terms and conditions. There are also a couple other county departments that contract with DSHS, Juvenile Department, I believe the Prosecuting Attorney's Office. So they have different program agreements that would also be connected to these general terms and conditions. It's a 6-year agreement. I believe the last agreement was 5 years. So they do in these kind of chunks of a period of time, these longer periods of times. It includes the standard language it includes is around confidentiality, dispute resolution, maintenance of records, subcontracting, and termination clauses. So that's kind of a brief overview. I'm not sure if you have any questions.
Well, I have to confess, I was a little surprised that the prosecutor's office and juvenile detention were connected with Health and Human Services. You don't normally provide services for those.
No.
But this is to allow the sharing of confidential records and, you know, maintaining those special features that are unique to.
We
those
just sort of
offices.
took the lead with getting it through Agenda Quick and getting it on the agenda today. But it does apply to any of those other agreements that other, you know, the contract is with Cowlitz County as a whole, so.
So this doesn't specifically bind the county to any one contract. It says if we take contract here, we can trace back the rules by which we have to behave
Correct,
over to this contract.
right? So you may see a program agreement coming to you in the future. That program agreement would say, you know, this is the program, this is the money to do the program, and we reference these general terms and conditions.
And
So-
at that time, if the public or we think those are conditions unacceptable, we just not accept the money.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from anybody? There's a gentleman at the podium. Please proceed.
I just want to clarify that this contract does not obligate you to any other contracts,
Mm-mm.
but future contracts may link back to this one.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve contract 23022 with Washington State Department of Social and Health Services as presented this morning.
Last opportunity for comments on the motion to approve contract 23-022. I see no hands. I see no one coming up. I call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Public Works. Okay, I guess, let me look. Susan, are you online?
There she goes. Susan, you're muted. There she
There
is.
Morning,
you are.
sorry, I was being transferred over. So what we have in front of you today is the bid award for the Abernathy Creek Road Bridge number 2 painter. For those of you not familiar where Abernathy Creek Bridge number 2 is, it's at milepost 4.33 to 4.36. This bridge is a concrete deck with steel girders underneath. We will be painting the underside of this bridge. We had two. 2, 4, 6, 7 bidders. The low bidder was Mericka Group LLC Mericka Group LLC out of Longview. They are underneath the engineer's estimate. They completed all of their paperwork and we're recommending award to this bidder. This is a project funded by WashDOT STPG bridge funding at 100% reimbursable.
Any questions from the audience? Any comments? I'll take the opportunity to, oh.
Good morning. I like the concept of always going with the lowest bid. I'm a little concerned that we get quality at the same time. Is there a track record that this person has that says they know how to paint the underside of a bridge? And if it's under what the engineers estimated the cost would be, I'm a little concerned that we'll end up with a shoddy job or having to fix something later on.
Well, I know that the state law requires us to take the lowest responsible bid. So companies have to perform at a certain minimum level. And certainly if they've reneged and haven't been able to finish a contract and have problems, then they lose that responsibility label. However, if you're a brand new company, you don't have any reason not to assume you can do quality work.
Gotcha.
We have to trust on supervision from our staff to make sure that they're following the rules. And
There you go. Okay.
yeah, so we make that effort to.
So it'll be
double check.
watched close enough to, okay. Thank you.
Susan, question for you. Is there any traffic impact?
There may be some minimal impacts when they're setting up because this is all under the bridge. So the traveling public will see minimal impacts, maybe some shoulder closures.
Okay, and do you have any idea what the cost split is between material and labor?
I do not.
My guess is paint is not cheap.
No,
Okay, and just to confirm that WashDOT is paying 100%?
WashDOT is paying 100%.
And just for
Because
our,
it's their money, they had to agree on the award. So we have to go through that extra step on this project.
and for our own edification, when will this work be completed?
So today is the award. They have 2 weeks to get the contract back. Then once the board signs the contract, they have, I don't know if this one's written for 10 or 21 days to start. So we're looking late August, beginning of September work.
Okay, and after the bridge is completed, we will pay the contractor and then WashDOT will reimburse us.
Correct.
And typically the delays in their are with WashDOT not too bad. Am I correct?
That is correct. WashDOT generally reimburses us within a couple of weeks of us sending our request in. So we bill WashDOT monthly. So we'll bill them for the month of July in August, and we generally get that money by the end of August.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Comments? I see none.
Mr. Chairman, I move we award the bid of $147,444 to Mericka Group LLC for Abernathy Creek Bridge 2 painting as presented.
Last call for comments. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I also say aye. Motion does pass.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner's Office.
We have a resolution on the agenda in the motion items for changing the office access to the administrative building to 4 days a week, Monday through Friday. This was in coordination with the auditor, the assessor, and the treasurer, and I believe they are online to talk a little more about it.
You said 4 days a week, Monday through Friday. You mean Monday through Thursday?
Monday through Thursday, sorry about that.
2 + 2 is 5. So which of, Carolyn, do you want to speak to this one?
Happy to. So this is, if anybody attended the workshops, this is a trial period that the commissioners are agreeing to. And I'll just say that in the auditor's office, our foot traffic has changed dramatically since COVID. A lot of the departments in this building are already operating on a 4-day work week, and other departments are currently getting complaints because citizens come in prior to their work hours only to find that we're closed. I'm not sure that there's a perfect answer here, but I do like the idea of this trial, closing on Fridays and extending our hours on Monday through Thursday and providing consistent hours specifically between auditor, assessor, and treasurer. So as according to this resolution, as of August 1st, we would all open at 7 a.m. together. So building and planning is a little bit different because they belong to a different union, and we can't, they work different hours according to their union contracts. So it's difficult to match consistently, but we're doing our best to provide consistent services to the public. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
So Carolyn, you did mention, though, there is an exception for those hours during election season, in which we need to be open to collect ballots. And why don't you review that just a little bit? That's not going to be every week, but
yeah, so I'm not willing to cut services to the public. I see this as a little bit of a hybrid in the auditor's office, and I think the treasurer's office is doing something similar as well. We simply are having trouble hiring people. The ability to rotate shifts and provide a 4-day work week option when we're hiring is very attractive these days. It will provide us that option, but at the same time, my office and also the treasurer's office, I'm still going to be providing recording services on Friday. That can be done by e-recording now. It doesn't need to be an in-person transaction any longer. So we can keep the building doors shut. We can minimally staff on Fridays. Elections I'm not required by statute actually to be open on Fridays, but I think that best serves the public to be open Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5, every election period, and also candidate filing week. And I believe the treasurer's office thinks that it best serves the public to be open during tax filing season as well.
That is correct, yes.
So we're trying to work through this kind of hybrid system and test it out with the public to see if this better serves their needs.
Beyond this agreement, or let me ask it like this, you have agreement from the unions?
So this isn't what we are doing. This isn't a permanent change. This is a trial period. So we are entering into individual contracts with each employee saying, okay, this is what the work week is going to look like now. If it doesn't work, we can reject it at any time. If it ever advances to the point of being negotiated with the unions and part of the union contract, then we don't have any more options. So right now, we have already drafted our what we call MOUs with each individual employee, and they are ready to sign so that if it doesn't work, our bases are covered and we can withdraw the agreements and go back to a 5-day work week.
Okay, and then in addition to some changes, we will have to change some of the county code.
I'm not legal, so I'm not sure about that. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Let me just leave it. It's a little more complicated. This is the spirit completely, but we've got some details that we have to work out. So you will get to see some of this in the future, I believe. But for the moment, the key issue is extended hours during the first 4 days of the week. And while initially I was not in favor of that because I don't want the public to think we're trying to shortchange them and not supply them the services they need to comply with our laws. I think it probably doesn't work out like that. We've given some thought to how many people show up on Friday, and we know that if we're open 8 to 5 kind of thing, well, that's the normal working hours for a lot of the public. And if we're open early and close, if we open before 8 and close after and stay open until after 5, that gives the public enhanced opportunity. So that's the idea behind it. And as Carolyn has said, it is a trial. And I think it'll probably work out just fine.
I think, Rachel, you're here from the treasurer's office?
I am, yes.
Great, okay. And you're in support of the proposal?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
And the assessor's office has been meeting with us as well. Currently, the building, I should say, not the building, the office hours of each department differ slightly. And we are working together, the assessor, auditor, and treasurer are really intertwined. And we are working together to set consistent building hours. So while currently the assessor's office is 7:30 to 5, they're going to change their operating hours to match ours so that we all open at 7.
And you close at?
Everybody's going to close at 5 with the exception of licensing and recording. They have to have a half an hour to reconcile their tills and process the bank deposits. Otherwise, the county would incur overtime costs.
And just for completeness, I suppose, whatever that means, the RCW says this board is authorized and responsible for setting hours across the entire county operations, including the electeds. That'll play into some discussion we'll see in the future. I really don't know how that will materialize.
Doug just joined us.
I beg your pardon?
Doug just joined us.
There, Doug, did you want to say something?
That is in fact a fact. And there have been some interesting interactions between electeds and boards in other counties. Invariably, the parties try to work together to make the best operations for the public, which is what you're doing here. The second comment is with regard to your changes in county code. When I drafted the policy 2.7 a few years ago, redrafted it, I built in some flexibility. That was COVID related, but it now spills over. So I don't foresee any changes to 2.7 for the electeds to be able to operate in this manner. And I built a sunset provision into the resolution you have, so will automatically lapse after 1 year if you do not extend it. So you should be good to go if that's your preference.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
And the wisdom included, and the wisdom included in the county code. So, Dennis, in this resolution, I made this grammar Nazi couldn't help himself, and I'm going to make a change in the word orientation, but has nothing to do with changing the other meaning. So when we approve this, it's going to be and I passed it through Doug, and he laughed at me, but he said it's okay.
Okay.
So we have a gentleman at the podium.
I guess I wanted to clarify a little bit better the definition of season, election season from the time the ballots go out until when, and tax season goes from when to when. I mean, we have a rough idea what that is, I assume.
So I'll answer for elections, and it's very specific for elections. The election period is the 18-day voting period every election. So once ballots are mailed, we're open. And we've already mailed ballots. Obviously, we're in the middle of the primary. So even though this resolution states, I believe it goes into effect August 1st, that's primary day for me. We're open 8:30 to 5.
For how many days after the election, after voting closes?
So after voting closes, the election period is closed. We would go back to the 4-day operating work week other than certification. If that falls on a Friday, and randomly it does, we would be open to the public.
Okay. And tax season would be?
Typically, the property taxes are due every April 30th and October 31st. Those are the due dates. And the week preceding the due dates are busiest. And so I would foresee that our office would be open that week as a 5-day work week.
Okay. That answers my question.
Thank you. Carolyn, before you go, this is also an opportunity to complete something I forgot to ask you about, which is your stated preference of mailing versus the use of the ballot boxes. Would you care to comment on that?
So not to diminish other public servants, but you will notice in all election materials, I try to stress the importance of utilizing a ballot drop box. It's more secure, it's more efficient. Me personally, I know that I'm using online banking or some sort of secure transmission. I'm not going to send my mortgage payment through the mail, and I would ask citizens to consider the same. We offer multiple ballot boxes in every city in the county. They're readily accessible. They're checked every day and emptied only by election officials. Save costs and limit your risk by utilizing a ballot drop box.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the resolution temporarily adjusting the days and hours of public access to the Cowlitz County Administration Building as presented, with one word exception that you've noted.
I'd like to comment on this issue before you vote on it. I'm looking at the first paragraph of this resolution, which hasn't been numbered yet. And I'm reading flexibility for the public, increase morale and productivity. Does that mean the public or the employees of Cowlitz County?
I believe it is for both, for the public employees. They'll end up speaking eventually on that, but I think they do tend to like a 4-day work week. For the public, that's why we have a trial period. They will tell us how this is working out, and the employees will tell us how this is working out. We're coming in with the belief that it is a positive, or we wouldn't be entertaining doing it. The proof will be in the future.
Well, as you know, Longview's been on a 4-day work week for quite some time now, except for EMS services. And if you're short on paying your bills and you don't realize they're on a 4-day week, guess what happens? You get docked. Now it says here, after morale and productivity, cost savings. How's it going to save us any money?
Well, there are a variety of ways. Let me move this to Carolyn, a strong proponent of the motion, and she will try and address that, I think.
Yeah, as I said before, I don't think that there is a perfect answer, but our foot traffic has changed. I was never a proponent of this idea in the past, but the public is being trained. You used an example of City of Longview. City of Kelso's also either on the 4-day work week already or moving towards it. The public is already being trained, so our traffic is so light that it's made me a believer. I believe the public will be better served because I am currently receiving complaints from people that work just like us, and they can't get into the office during those work periods. So they come in early and then they have to ping pong between offices just to find I'm closed and I don't open until 8:30. So I'm receiving those complaints currently. We're trying to do the best that we can. Again, this is a trial period just to see, does it best serve the public? And
Yeah.
we will also not have security costs on Friday. We won't have security in the building. And I believe the heating and cooling, all of that will be off on Fridays.
Are the county employees going to be docked for that Friday? That would be an empirical cost saving in my mind.
So county employees will still, they're by contract work 37.5 hours for this office, whether that is from 7 a.m. till 5 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or whether that is 8:30 to 5 Monday through Friday. They're going to work the same number of hours at the same pay rate. The hours of operation are the only change.
So there'll be no cost savings as it pertains to salary.
Neutral.
What do you mean by neutral?
No difference. There is no difference
So there is no cost savings.
when it comes to salary.
Well, yes, and there are some maybe unintended consequences, but some people actually drive into the office 5 days a week. They drive in 4 days a week. They save that, and there are derivative savings that are consequent to all of that. Again, that's why we have a trial.
I would
So-
point out one more fact that is just kind of a natural consequence of COVID. Our world kind of moved to this virtual meeting setting. It moved to working from home. There are so many opportunities out there for employees to receive these benefits. And frankly, we are having a very difficult time finding people that want to work Monday through Friday. So yes, this is a benefit to us. It makes, since we can't pay more, it makes our positions a little more attractive when we are recruiting.
So in addition to no savings via salary for county employees, you also get a 3-day weekend, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, like I said, Longview's been on this for at least more than 5 years. And I don't see any benefit to the public, and the county assessor, as of last year, has already been closing the office on Friday. So what's the benefit to the public? I don't see any.
I'll just repeat that we are already operating with inconsistent hours. It's confusing to the public. We're receiving complaints now. This is a trial period, an opportunity to provide extended services to see if this meets the needs to the public.
Although I don't think it may be necessary, if Tracy Jackson's on, she can tell us a little bit about building and planning and her experience there regarding
Yeah.
hours.
Hi, Commissioners. I just got moved over. For us, we're here from 7 to 5:30. We're here for the contractors, early hours. We get the schedules in and done, and then we service the customer better. We can get out in the field sooner, especially a lot of them require the concrete pours. And we're kind of on their timeline for their service. So we're trying to provide the best customer service that we can. Building and planning's been on 4-day work weeks for quite some years. It's worked out really well, especially in the early mornings to service the contractors. So
Yeah,
it's been a huge
I
benefit.
haven't heard any complaints of the hours of building and planning. And have you, Mr. Weber?
No, I haven't.
So,
Other than the people who don't realize it's closed when they come here.
Right.
And that,
Right.
but it never follows with, I wish they were here, because I didn't know that they were closed. So that's part of that information service, and that is helpful. I think having offices open starting at 7 o'clock in this community is a great advantage for doing that.
And I believe the
Carolyn,
Cowlitz
there is
PUD
actually, oh, excuse me.
I'm sorry, Dennis. I believe the Cowlitz PUD went to 4-day work weeks just recently too. So it's kind of like, we don't have phone calls that come in. If I'm here on Fridays, the phone does not ring on Fridays. It's ghost town.
Carolyn, there is a question that somebody asked about, are there drop boxes at city halls?
No, our drop boxes in Cowlitz County are all permanent drop boxes, meaning they are drive-up drop boxes, and they're all located in each of the cities next to the city's post office boxes. We wanted them to be well-known destinations so that people who are already using those post office boxes would just automatically also use the ballot boxes.
But both Longview and Kelso at least have drop boxes relatively close to City Hall also. I
Yes.
mean, it's coincidental, but I don't know about the outlying communities.
No, none inside any buildings. These are all
Right.
permanent drive-up drop boxes, so people don't even have to get out of their car.
I think Castle Rocks is right at the parking lot, isn't it? Or they're at their City Hall.
It's on this, I'm not sure where the city hall is. It's right in front of the library, right on the strip. So I'm not real sure where the city hall is.
okay, thank you.
Thanks.
We have a motion.
All right, yes, we do have a motion. Okay.
So I'd like to I do call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Motion does carry. we are at a point in time where we are just right on schedule to go through the 2023 budget amendment hearing.
Good morning, Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Manager. And the Office of Financial Management is presenting budget amendments for the 2023 county budgets to increase appropriations and to account for additional expenditures and revenues, as well as to dissolve a fund for emergency management special projects as the fund is no longer necessary. Other adjustments to transfer funds from the dissolved fund to the emergency management fund will be necessary. I'm here to answer any questions on the proposed amendments, and if you'd like me to recap any of those, I'll be happy to.
We workshopped this on at least 2 previous occasions,
Yes, we did.
and
July 10th, I believe.
yeah.
So if I understand correctly, some of these adjustments are upon your recommendation, looking at revenues not meeting the forecasts that we had. And so making adjustments so that we don't overspend. And I
Yes.
think that's wise
And
to do that.
And we also have some revenues that are exceeding our budget.
New
Um,
revenues.
mhm.
And it also includes the results of several discussions between the coroner and this board, and it's mounted in an additional $250,000, I think, for the rest of the year for them to make up for.
$245,000 for the coroner's office
Okay.
to meet their obligations.
Right. And I can't remember, did we put placeholders in for the opioid settlement funds when they came in?
When they did come in, that was in our last budget amendment in the month of April.
Okay.
Estimating the revenues to come in from that fund. And in this budget amendment, we're changing the department that those are associated with to the Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay.
I can't help but comment on something that may be a little unpopular, but the budget for the previous coroner was exiting, and it was that person's responsibility to give us a realistic budget, and that did not happen. And that should not have been that way.
Yeah, the budget was amended down based upon recommendations of the previous coroner. And so the current coroner and myself went through all of the expenditures and anticipated expenditures for the year and arrived at this amended budget.
Then is it in this amendment where we're doing the rainy day fund or the?
Yes, that is one of the major items we're showing on this budget amendment is this, you previously had approved establishing a budget rainy day fund, budget, it's called Budget Stabilization Fund. You approved that. This budget amendment actually transfers funds into that fund from the general fund. And the amount of that is $1,549,917.
And we call that the rainy day fund or a stabilization fund because it takes more than just a majority vote to expend those funds, right?
Correct. You approved a policy for this, and the policy states all commissioners unanimously must approve any transfers from this fund.
See, I'd like to repeat that. It's a very good point. Money available is always an attractive nuisance, but it's a necessary thing if you're going to have prudent operations. You cannot foresee everything. So therefore, it requires 3 commissioners to agree to tap into that fund. And then there are several restrictions that tell you what would be a valid issue.
Right, emergency needs, unforeseen economic downturn in order to continue to provide county services, things like that.
Dennis, do you remember if there was anything else key we should highlight in that?
There were several other departments, but it was all relatively minor switches. Some
Right.
were was switching some cash funds and fixing them. Pretty much following recommendations of the state auditor's office too on a couple of those items. Just to make the flow of the money clearer and more transparent.
If you have no further questions, I'll open up the hearing. I hope you notice I'll use my left hand. The public hearing is now open. The public is welcome to come up and speak, ask questions. But they're not obligated to do so. I see nothing, no one coming forward, no hands. So, ooh.
Hello,
Good morning.
I was just trying to make sure this was the right time to make a public comment
About this topic.
about, yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. Which topic are we on? Sorry.
We're on the budget amendment for the 2023 budget.
Okay, so I was wondering, like, for the coroner's office, because I guess I could ask Dana. Anyway, is it all right if I get your phone number so I could ask you some questions after the meeting? Okay, thank you for now.
Okay, I don't see anybody else. I'll close the public hearing. And I'll look to my colleague.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the 2023 budget amendment as presented today.
I look for anyone else who wants to make a comment at this point. I think we've had plenty of opportunity. I call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion does pass, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick, are you doing the Rogers Telecom 10-year non-exclusive franchise? Would you like to come up? Are we too early? Oh, we've got 7 minutes. My apologies. Let me be comfortable, and I'll open it up right now for 7 minutes of public commentary on any topic.
Is that different from the one we just got?
Anyone wishing to speak on any topic? This is an opportunity.
Hi, as you guys know, they're closing Larch Mountain, and on the KGW8 website, it says that they plan on making 70 beds available in Longview. Do you know anything about that?
I didn't hear the very first thing that you said.
Large Mountain.
Oh,
closing.
yes. Oh,
And they plan on making 70 beds available in Longview. Do you know anything about that?
we actually had a discussion yesterday. The prosecuting attorney was here for a totally different other manner. We got to talking, and the we don't know anything about that. Nobody's contacted the county. The state does have a work release office building that has the capacity for about 60 beds.
Okay,
And
so it's just
the
for work release.
conjecture is the state's taking care of that.
Okay.
Excellent. Marin is online with her hand
Oh,
raised.
that's
and I
right.
appreciate that. Please go ahead and speak to us, Marin. She will address your question.
Yes, there she is. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. I contacted DOC yesterday to ask the question about the use, the information about opening a facility in Longview. It does sound like their intent is to use the work release house to house the inmates that are involved in the fire program. So that is their intent. It isn't official yet, according to them, and the details aren't worked out, but that is the plan, so they can continue to assist with wildfires.
Would you mind restating that more slowly for my feeble mind?
Sure. So with the closure of Larch Mountain, their spokesperson stated that they intended to open a facility in Longview, a 70-bed facility. I reached out to a contact at Department of Corrections yesterday, and he confirmed that that plan is to use the work release facility, which is located 2 doors down from the jail, and use those beds to house the inmates that are currently at Larch Mountain involved in the wildfire program, so they can continue to assist with wildfires that occur locally.
So if you were a fire department, you're still happy that you have that capability available to you?
Yeah, I would assume so.
Okay, thank you.
And the level of inmates at Larch Mountain is not the same as Walla Walla or some of the other institutions. You mentioned yesterday, low risk or relatively low risk?
Correct. Minimum security. Yep.
Minimum security. Okay. So not
Thank you.
not violent prone inmates.
No, and it would require the state to relocate the inmates they have housed at the work release facility currently, so they'll have to move those to other work release facilities in the state.
Okay. Thank you.
We have time for another comment. Or let's talk about your vacation plans for a moment. It doesn't make any sense to stop for 2 minutes.
Everybody's just so anxious for this wonderful next public hearing.
I imagine so.
Okay, I guess I'll make a little noise. So moving those people from Larch Mountain down here, wouldn't they be further away from fighting fires than if they were up there?
I assume that's the case, but I'm sure they factor that in there. I think Carolyn Fundingsline said earlier, there's no perfect solution.
But it makes more common.
Well, the state made the decision to close Larch Mountain, so that's not an option. So
How long have they been closed?
about 3 months ago, was it? Yeah, it'll close in October, so.
So where are they right now?
And one of the things that they discovered, I think that if you know any more information, the number of folks is down. So they have a big facility, then it's expensive to run facilities like that with.
Well, of course, it's down. Look at Deputy Do running, you know what? But anyway, but where are they at this time?
They're still at Larch Mountain at this time.
So
But
they're
that
still
facility
up
is
there.
closing and so.
But they're closing, which again, doesn't make common sense.
Well, if you suspect that they were just open the gates and let the folks out, that isn't happening.
I've been
That's-
up there before.
I beg your pardon?
I've been up there before and it was actually nice for them to be out there rather than in town.
That could be, and along those lines, I regret very much, or I don't like the fact that the Nacelle Youth Camp was closed.
The Cell Youth Camp, is that what you
I-
said?
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar situation. I'm not sure what the economics of all that is and the politics, but our purview is rather limited. We have to live with the situation that is dropped on our laps.
Well, elections have consequences and stolen elections have catastrophic consequences.
That's a good theme to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's begin with the Rogers Telecom franchise.
Good morning, Commissioners. Patrick Harbison, Public Works. With me is Anna Lunde from Public Works. This morning, we have before you a non-exclusive telecommunication franchise with Rogers Telecom. This is one of the most complicated franchises we've ever brought forward, so bear with me as I try to explain the situation. Rogers installed conduit inside the Olympic pipeline right away in 1998 under a substantial shoreline development permit. Couple of months ago, Mox Communications approached us about installing fiber optic within conduit and vaults in this right of way. We found out that Rogers owns the conduit. Someone else owns the vaults. Mox would own the fiber. So 3 different entities would own what we would normally consider one single system. Each one of them is required to get their own individual franchise, because as you can imagine, locates are required, insurance is required, who would be ultimately responsible. So each individual one's required to get their own individual. The franchise has been negotiated amongst between our prosecuting attorney's office and their attorneys. It has standard insurance requirements, standard locate requirements. As normal up to this point, there's no annual fee or franchise fee required. They are required to pay for any administrative costs such as our attorney costs or a staff time required to administer the permit, but no franchise fee. That's just like a standard fee like we could do on cable. This franchise is only applicable to areas within the public right of way. So basically where the Olympic pipeline crosses Clammer River Road, Green Mountain Road, Ostrander Road, those places. I do know that I'm not sure if Rogers is online. Can I ask if they are?
They would probably be in the attendees list. Is there a name I might be looking for?
It would be Adrian McDonald or Samuel Statinsky.
If there is a Rogers Telecom person online, please hold up your hand, flag, or, flag. I don't see any.
Okay. I'm asking for legal purposes. Then I'm gonna turn it over to Doug, if you wouldn't mind.
That would be good. I always like hearing from Doug.
I have handed you, Doug, I've handed them a copy of the document.
Thank you. Let me take this will take about 10 minutes. And the reason for that is, as Patrick indicated, it's somewhat a complex interaction with Rogers Communications. They are Canadian corporation.
If I could interrupt you for a moment, Doug.
Sure.
Because it's going to go into a public hearing, would you give us the abstract if there is anything that the public needs to pay attention in detail from what you're going to say?
Yes. the focus has to be in terms of the hearing itself. What I'm trying to do is present Roger's position on this and our response back. And that's what it'll take just a few minutes to go through. And that then will be part of the public discussion and part of the board's deliberation. So the first element is that the county did review its records. There was no record of this matter having been franchised. The reason we can be certain of that is twofold. Number one, the shorelines permit did not cover areas within the county right away. They covered areas outside, and that was the nature of the request. Secondly, as you know, today, this is a legislative process. It would have had to gone through the board for approval of a pre-existing franchise with Rogers or a predecessor of Rogers. For this line, there was no record of that. So again, this is currently Rogers is occupying a county right of way, contrary to statute. And just briefly on that, we've had this discussion. To some extent, the county is a trustee for county roads as an agent of the state, although the state's given the county control over county roads and operation of county roads and establishment of county roads. But it's all pursuant to statute, as is the franchising process. So we go through this process. It's not contractual. It's not per se a negotiation in real estate. It is a legislative process governed by statute, governed by case law, and governed by mandates and coming from both the Cable Act, for instance, and the Telecommunications Act, that we treat all franchisees similarly. In other words, we treat them equally in the process. So we started with a format that is consistent with franchisees, pipelines, telecommunications, and utilities all have utilized this same franchising format. So I would break down the comments of Rogers starting on page 6. As Patrick noted, they were worried about what fees are being charged. The response back was basically that the county is entitled and is required to prevent gifting of public funds and resources to recoup its cost of actually doing the franchising. The second part of it is that they were dissatisfied or concerned with having to do relocations, whether as a consequence of county actions or as a consequence of other franchisees. And again, the RCW's chapter 3655, which governs franchising, is fairly clear on this, that the cost of operating and occupying a county franchise falls solely on the franchisee or the person granted the rights. This is permissive occupancy. It's not statutory. It's not mandated. It's not required. So that to the extent that they have to relocate, move their operation, arguably it's probably not going to happen. But if they do, statutorily and legally, it's obligated that they do it themselves. They were also concerned about whether the county would do inspections, and the response back was those inspections are not only a consequence of the county's franchising process, but also an obligation generally of the county to maintain its roads in a safe and secure position, with recent case law indicating that not only must the roadway be maintained in a safe and passable position for the public, but you also have to be cognizant of what's in the right of way to ensure that use of the right of way does not create an off-road hazard should a car leave the right of way. There was a question about certificate of insurance, and as we indicated to them, in Washington, a certificate of insurance, or what's called an accord document that you've seen, doesn't carry any legal weight with it, and we've simply substituted that with language that says if we need to look at your policy, and you're concerned about it having trade secrets or putting you in a difficult financial position for purposes of stockholders or whatever, we just need to physically look at it. And we can arrange that. They asked that if the county right-of-way is ever vacated, that the county impose an easement so that they can maintain the usage of the right-of-way. The county, or it's annexed. The county can't guarantee that because, again, as with this franchise, the vacation process is a legislative process with the board then sitting, making a decision what's in the best public interest. Lastly, they had some questions as to the insurance. I didn't make any changes to that. There was some feedback from the risk pool. But my comment is generally with telecoms, we don't run into excessive insurance concerns. I think our discussions primarily that have been strident have been with the pipeline folks, where we've talked about the offsite impacts of either an escape or an explosion. So I have really no input on the request for insurance changes, and I would just defer to the board on that. So in summation, we rejected much of their requests for changes. We reverted back to the original content, which again has been signed off on by multiple telecoms, utilities, and even the pipeline folks, including the pipeline folks that are protected under the Interstate Pipeline Act, the telecoms that are protected under the Telecommunications Act, and the cable folks that operate under the federal authority of the Cable Act, all recognizing that the format the county currently utilizes is in the best public interest, not unreasonable, not restrictive to their operations. So that's my presentation, gentlemen.
So in order for us to approve, if we wanted to, we have to get a fresh copy, right? A clean copy, because they've made comments, and you've like you said, you've rejected most of their requested changes. So.
Yeah, and it's already sent a copy of my changes to Kelly, and that's already in the record. I did that this morning, and they've received a copy of it as well in advance. So the only changes you're really looking at are to the insurance terms. They've requested some changes, and I didn't make any changes to those.
So Doug, in one of my in one of the resolutions that we passed this morning, I think in the fine print was some reference to certifying that we're not contracting with anyone who has any connection with Russia, since they're under embargoes and suspensions from the federal government. Since this is a foreign country or foreign corporation, do we need a certification that somehow they're not somehow connected, controlled by Russian influence? I'm not sure what the process is for doing that, other than a certification statement.
They operate through a subsidiary that is actually a U.S. corporation. It's incorporated in the state of Delaware. So strictly speaking, although we've been in communication with counsel in Ontario, Canada, the company that you're franchising is Rogers Telecom US Incorporated, a Delaware corporation.
Hey, question for you, Doug. What is the proper procedure? I not having a clean copy in my hand, I'm left to think, am I approving, if I get to that point, what kind of copy?
The copy that was presented for the public review was the original copy that went out for publication and is currently being reviewed. Rogers response, I took the place, for lack of a better word, because that also needed to be entered into the record that they had requested some changes. Apparently they're not appearing personally, but again, the board's trying to decide what's in the best public interest. So the copy you would be operating on would be the original version. If you want me to go over the changes in the insurance issues, I can. I could read them without re-commenting on them. But I don't view them as for my purposes, substantive as to exactly what is being addressed for purposes of the actual placement of and continued use of that their dark fiber lines or their fiber lines. So I think you can proceed to hearing on the original version and then take into consideration what I presented to you as though it were testimony for an alternative to the original version.
So Doug, I may have missed something in your opening comments. Has the work already been done?
Yes, so they put it in the ground many years ago without notifying the county. And again, I think Rogers is a successor in interest to this, but the original company just, burrowed a line straight from, I believe, Seattle to Portland, maybe points beyond, without interfacing with the county for use of the county right away. So at this point, they're a trespasser.
The importance of the franchise agreement is to make sure that any future damage that occurs within the right of way is taken care of by the company, not the taxpayers, right?
Correct.
And that's basically simplify it right down.
Yeah, the background to all of this is that state law has declared that use of the county right of way is primarily for the traveling public, which means that if there has to be a relocation or some type of adjustment on the county right of way, that franchisees are notified, or anybody that's in the right of way is notified that they need to relocate so the county can perform its primary obligations with regard to the road and use of that right of way for road purposes. If they don't, then statutorily we can remove that. We can move it for them. So it all goes back to the primary point in all of this is that the state has declared that right of ways are primarily for roadways. Anything that's left over in the right of ways is a secondary use. And if it's there, it has to be franchised, and franchised with conditions to ensure this, which you'll find under your chapter 3655 as part of your hearing findings, that this interferes to the least extent to those road purposes, which you can do if there's a franchise with, like I said, with all those conditions on moving and et cetera, and that it's in the public interest, again, because compliance with the law in this case is certainly in the public interest, and certainly Cowlitz County taxpayers. So that's why at least this office is recommending that you adopt the original version, and with the exception perhaps of the insurance coverage issues, which again, I haven't commented on.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Yep. I'm wondering who signs what. That is to say, I would assume that the grantee would have signed a document saying, yes, I want this. And then we, the grantors, would subsequently sign.
This is the one document that you sign first.
All right.
Because it's a legislative enactment, you basically legislate that you're going to offer a franchise to this individual to occupy the county right away. The interesting part here is they're already there. If they don't sign it, well, we'll revisit that in the near term.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I was going to ask about the timeliness of this issue, but how many years has this been going on? No, okay, never mind. We don't need to spend any time. The fee is of interest to me. Can you quantify that?
So Doug's office sends Public Works all of their costs that they've incurred. We gather all Public Works costs we've incurred. We send that invoice to Rogers prior to us sending your signed copy. They have to pay that invoice before we send them the signed copy. And then once we send the signed copy, they sign it and send it back. We have to receive their signed copy within 30 days. So they don't really have a chance to argue much of anything.
Okay, thank you. So it's a one-time fee.
Yes. And it's T&M of what it took us to administer.
Right.
That's it.
Right. And a reason, and in general, no, actually, we don't charge any franchise fees on a per usage basis or something like that.
Not for
Strictly T&M Upstart.
Correct, not for telecommunications. He did discuss inspections in here. We do charge for inspections. Once, if they cut the asphalt and we have an inspector on site, we will charge time and materials for the inspector to be on site and inspect that. Because once again, the taxpayer shouldn't bear the burden of.
Right. Dennis, good time to open up the public hearing?
I think so.
So again, the magic left-handed gavel. The public hearing is open. This is a time for the public to come up and ask questions, make any comments. I think that's probably the correct answer. This is sort of an arcane, perfunctory kind of thing to do. I don't see any hands. So, last call. I closed the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we adopt the franchise agreement as presented by by our council.
The motion is to approve the 10-year non-exclusive franchise as has been presented to us.
That would include those insurance adjustments that he
It
mentioned.
includes all the adjustments, correct. I don't see anybody speaking up. This is an opportunity if you have more questions. Seeing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion does pass. And we're now going to go back to the public comment period, although, oh, by the way, I thank you. You left the public with no questions. So this is a time for anyone in the public to speak on anything they would like to express. If I run the gavel fast enough, we'll avoid.
So my comment today is, I believe that, and I'm not sure about how much authority you have over the Health and Human Services of what you can have them say or do. However, I do find it would be important now for somebody to issue it's really weird to see myself on the big screen like that. I'm glad it's not in 4K. I should have combed my hair. So, I think it's time that we recognize that this actions during COVID were way off base. And I think anybody that was reasonable mind would know that the mask thing was ridiculous. And forcing vaccinations on people, also a really bad thing. It's been bad for our state and bad for our economy. And so it's not like they can go back and undo anything. But I think it's a time now to say, hey, you know what? We got it wrong. We're sorry. I think at the very least, they could say, give the all clear. You don't have to wear a mask anymore. You know, I constantly see people on a daily basis, you know, walking on the street by themselves, wearing a mask, which is their right to do that. I'm not knocking it if they need to do that for their mental well-being or whatever, but I think at the very least, there should be like an all clear. You know, it's like, okay, you don't have to have your mask anymore. And, you know, I don't know, can you guys do that? Can you, I mean, you guys are off the hook because you kind of came out with the resolution not to follow along with that stuff, which was a good thing. And so I'm not calling on you guys to do that necessarily, but I know that during that time, you know, you would see their posts, especially in Facebook, and it'd be like, wear your mask, get a vaccination, get your kids vaccinated. And we know now that those things were wrong. And I think that we deserve an apology.
That's actually interesting. If you were to go, I don't know about today, but yesterday, if you'd gone down to building and planning, you would have seen an employee who would attend to you at the front desk. That employee had a mask. And the purpose of the mask in that case was what you've seen for years. If you traveled in, say, into Japan, you'd see occasionally people with a mask as they walk down the street. Typically, that mask is worn by people who say, I have a cold or I have a fever and I don't want to contaminate other people, but I have to conduct business or something like that. It wouldn't be reasonable for us to do anything at all to mandate either way. Now we can say something, but we have done so even more strongly than in words. We have done that in our actions. And I think that should be sufficient. About your comments regarding HHS and our publications and the website and all the stories in the website, I agree with you. I was unhappy at the time. I was asking for a more balanced approach on the website, but I did not prevail. And yes, apologies are due, and I'm not so sure how apologies are going to handle all the damage that was done. One of the damages we saw was all the eateries that went out of business, like Duffy's 2 is the only one that survived because it violated the mandates of the day. They collected a fine of totaling over $1 million, and they just refused to pay it and refused to close their doors. That should give the public a clue that when there are mandates that are not reasonable, certainly one could argue unconstitutional, the public needs to take action. Stuffy's 2s did, and they survived. Many other restaurants just closed and they're never going to open again. Do we have anything in the works to address this? I'm thinking about it. I welcome any comments you have along those lines. Mr. Weber.
Well, I think it's one of those situations where the public has already demonstrated their feeling on it. I mean, the rules, we've moved on from it, I think.
Yeah.
And I think information I continually get is on other issues. There are other more pressing issues for us to be addressing. And we are working on those. So.
I don't see any hands up.
This virtual way of doing business is leading down the wrong path. And for those of you who are awake, you know what I mean. Yesterday, I was listening to a host on MSNBC yammering on about President Trump and his attorneys and the other side, and yammering on and et cetera. So the point is that the host is the talking head because on all the screens they're showing of all involved, there's no audio, none of what's really being said in the courtroom with those attendees. On Real America's Voice News, the news with the American flag, they actually play the news with audio so that we, the people, know from their own voices what they are saying. I believe the situation would refer to the truth. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. With that said, we all need to pray clearly for God to put the right people in their prospective offices. And then thought I'd have a little fun. Oh, excuse me, taxes, if I understand right, taxes are voted on by the people, is that correct?
No.
Huh? No?
When it comes to that kind of question, I would often defer to Mr. Weber. I will always argue that we are lulled into the belief that we have taxation with representation, and the answer is yes, but is it meaningful? And the answer is no, my opinion.
So there are very few tax levies that the state legislature allows us to impose after a vote of the people. One example is the 0.3% tax, sales tax in Longview and Kelso for the city transit system. So that's a very, very targeted amount that is allowed. On the other hand, the legislature said to the county commissioners, you can impose a 0.1% tax for behavioral health purposes. And that did not require a vote of the people.
So it depends.
Most votes of the people, I mean, most of the taxes don't depend upon a vote of the people. Probably the most common example, though, comes from junior taxing districts who want to borrow to build new buildings like a new school or to remodel schools, and they'll get voters' permission for a bond issue. That entitles them to borrow money at a lower rate because the voters have approved. We haven't done that. We've borrowed money and issued bonds, but we haven't gone to a vote of the people. It's just a decision that we made. Consequently, the interest rates are a tad bit higher. A couple of other. There's also, you can raise property taxes for a special levy, an excess levy, by a vote of the people. Schools do that also. They do bond issues and they do special levies. But again, most of the taxes we pay, though, are not voted on each year at all.
And
but the expenditures and the levying of those taxes, those are decisions made by elected officials. That's part of our legislative function, whether you're on the city council or state legislature or the county commission. So.
Yeah, if I could add under that, there are the direct, obvious taxes that people get to see. Then they're what I call the implicit taxes. So the citizens approve the school bond, but that goes directly onto your property tax. It was voted by the people, but most of the people don't want to pay it, but they voted for it.
The other thing that affects your property tax levels is if the value of your property goes up. It becomes more valuable because the market conditions, raise the prices. Competition for housing being what it is, the value of your property goes up, and there's the potential then your tax bill will go up as a result. And I think probably that more than any other thing generates complaints about taxes. It's like
Yeah.
they get their new assessments and they know their taxes are going to go up because their property is worth more.
We have to be clear on that too, though. The school bond that is paid through property tax, but it's actually the bond payment is what determines what money will come from the property. So if your property went up 50% across the board in the county, and you wouldn't have to pay 50% more of the school bond portion. That would stay. However, the levy and the fire department levy, all of those are just a levy rate directly against the value of the property. Those will go up. If your house increased by 50%, your taxes are going to be up by 50% in that category.
Now, about 20 years ago, there was an initiative signed by the people that limited property tax increases to no more than 1% a year. Very, very active campaign, very controversial campaign. It was approved only to be later thrown out by the courts as there is some loophole that they used. And after that happened, the state legislature went ahead and adopted the 1% limit. And so we're still operating under the 1% limit, with the exception of those special levies and special bond issues. We can only collect 1% more one year over the other. With a few exceptions, if there's new property being built, that's just new valuation that can be added on. So there's lots of ways that the public has their input on the level of taxation that we have, but the taxes aren't sunsetted unless we put it on. And actually, this commission has had a sunset on the behavioral health tax. That's the only one. And it's coming up in 2 years.
No, it's coming up.
Later this year.
The behavioral health tax? Yeah, it's this year, end of this year or this spring of next year.
Okay.
Yeah, we mentioned, we opened up the meeting regarding elections and the importance of them. Well, if you heard about 20% show up for election at this point of an off-year election, and yet that they're council members and all that. So if you do the math or do the arithmetic, a fifth of the public, the voting public, determines the election of a candidate at best. And it's actually, candidates don't get 100%. So you take the 20% that did vote, about 10% supported the candidate that prevailed. So that's 10%. And then you go into the presenting that in the city council when they decide on fees or whatever it is, it may end up impacting the taxpayer. You can see the numbers multiply out that probably on average, 15% of the people at best determine what our taxes are. In my book, that means there's a systemic problem in there. And that's why we have such a terrible problem, because taxes are not viewed favorably. At the beginning of World War II, people were happy to buy US savings bonds, were happy to do anything to help the country. But a lot of people are not happy to do things they don't believe in. And I can pick examples on both sides of the aisle where they're forced to pay for something they find abhorrent, and that's wrong.
Yeah, because I was gonna ask about how the fees, did they get voted on? How did they come up? Because I just like, well, I'm gonna back up a little bit. When I was growing up, my dad, when he paid property taxes, anyway, if he would get buy like a used trailer, just something, and believe me, it would unfortunately deteriorate a bit. He's gone now. But anyway, it would deteriorate. And then through the years, maybe get something else, but it wasn't top, you know, it was like needed worked on. And then they'd come out and they would take up his property taxes when it should have actually went even lower. But the whole thing I'm saying, it was just ridiculous. But with that said, the fees, how did they come to be?
Boy, that's 101 answers, right? Did you want to take that?
So with Cowlitz County, our fees typically are the ones levied in the building and planning for building permits, those kinds of things, some health permits. If you're in a service club that operates a food booth at, say, Go Forth, there's an inspection fee.
Why?
Those inspection fees, the fees are designed to cover the costs of conducting the inspection or this, take care of the service. So once a year, the departments present to us a review of the fees, and we approve them. In fact, I think the last time the result was a reduction of fees because they went ahead and reviewed how they compiled those fees and realized it didn't cost as much to do them as it used to. Technology has a lot to do with that too. So we raise them, we lower them based on what staff convinces us is appropriate for cost recovery.
It was like when people go in and like if I want to get car tabs or do certain, you know, business like that, and they add fees and like to go to the state parks and this and that, the fees, and then they have services and this and that. And I am a little bit wiser in my years, of course, and just, you know, it's like there's so much of this just keeps coming up and up. And some years back, I was like, you know, they want to raise the minimum wage, but when they raise the minimum wage, then per se your milk, bread go up, okay? So every time they raise the minimum wage, then things get more expensive. And I'm like, so, you know, let's say when I was 25, I'm thinking in 100 years, that means that milk's going to be $100 a gallon. So how much is it going to be hourly? It's not making sense. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So thank you for that.
So the state parks fee that's on your license tabs, that's optional. You don't have to pay.
Right,
for it.
I know
So
that.
that goes to help the state, and that's a state decision.
They get enough.
And I know we just paid our car tabs and we live in the city of Longview. And so they tacked on another $40 fee it's another tax to help with their road maintenance program.
So when are you guys going to come up with some horse and carriage parks for us along the street?
If you're inside the city limits, that's the city's responsibility. So if you're inside.
So you'd
the
ask
city,
them to put up a place for the horses?
you can ask them.
Because recently there was a guy riding I saw a video of this guy riding on the freeway on his horse and motorcycles around him and some cop, and it's like they were talking about it on the TV, and it's like, I guess I can't really get him. And it's like they weren't really trying to pull him over. They were just kind of following him. It was interesting. He'd go pretty good. I'm like thinking horsepower, you know, but anyway, it's cool to watch, and it just went on. And so anyway, thought I'd have a little fun here, and I hope you don't mind. I only got like 2 of them. Biden says, dementia my arse. I've always been this dumb. Biden Harris, one nation under fraud, clearly visible, with bribery and corruption for all. So God bless America, and Trump is our president. Thank you.
Just before you go.
Yes, sir.
Ignoring the last 2 statements, you were asking some pretty fundamentally interesting questions, and there are some philosophic issues in that are rather substantial. So for example, people in the highlands are going to pay property tax just like other people. When the city decides to build a park for an activity that is really not popular in the highlands, nor is the park going to be built in the highlands, you're essentially taking people's funds from the Highlands to pay for something they're really not interested in. And if you look at public assets, they typically are very expensive. The bathrooms at Lake Sacagawea get messed up time and time again. We've had to rebuild the public bathrooms at our county parks. One could make an argument is don't charge those fees, don't charge those as a tax, charge them as a fee. That's one point. Another point is when I was very young, you could go to parks and they were all included with your general taxes. We've had, Dennis can probably talk to you, but the thousands of ways that the legislature has shifted what was included before. Their costs have, their taxation of you hasn't changed, but they moved what used to be free, they now push it on the county to have to pay for it. So there are all these games going on. And your questions are actually all around that. And it's a pretty extensive discussion. There's nothing here we can really resolve. I just want people to be alert. And fundamentally, you always look and see there's nothing for free. So somebody is paying for it. Is it morally, ethically supportable that this set of people should pay for that set of people or anything overall?
Okay. When Trump was in office, gas was down, things were going well, but they had him, the Obama Biden administration constantly had him in the courtroom fighting against their stuff. And then with Biden and the open borders, and all these people coming up.
If I could interrupt you, I prefer not going into national politics on the matter. I
thought this was public comment, sir.
It is public comment, but you were trying to respond to my comment. And I'm saying I use the word I prefer to. So if you're using what I said for that, I'm saying please don't. If you want to continue to talk, have at it.
Well, with that said, sir, I am in the process. I've been watching these things other people don't see. Because they don't watch real news. Newsmax and OAN or OANN, anyway, they're closed. But with Real America's Voice, they come on in the morning and they tell what day it is. And so with that said, I'm been watching all this stuff happen. And with all these mainstream media, they're not telling people all around the world what's really happening around the world. And we're living in the end times. I don't care what other people said. If you read the word, you could see these real true things going on without propaganda on mainstream media, then you would understand. And I just don't want anybody, it's like they're headed for us to go to a microchip in our palm or in our head, like with Neuralink, okay? And one thing I've learned recently is if you get that in your body, it's electrical. It's gonna burn you up. You're gonna start, your humanity's, your skin and everything's gonna start falling off. And that's sad. That's really pathetic. But I just wanted to share that with you. And if that's okay with you, I'd like to be done.
Yeah, it's your choice. I do want to use this opportunity to say in general, we often can do things, we are permitted to do things, and the real question is, should we do it? And that's
True.
that is on us.
Right.
This hearing room is for the purpose of the public, for the most part, to deal with issues germane to where we are. So as a public administration kind of thing, for every person who would want to come up here and make a comment on something, there's going to be 10 other people there are going to be other people that sit on the other side that would say almost the very same thing. I do in general, there's not, you just general, I would like the public to keep in mind that we can occupy our entire time on something that is not going to be productive, but is going to lead to a polarization that really doesn't serve anybody any good.
What doesn't serve anybody, what I'm saying?
If you want me to comment specifically on that, what I would have done is simply is outline it without too many names, is saying there are other news sources out there than what I think is called the mainstream media. My personal opinion is probably much closer line to what you said, but it's an opinion. I cannot prove some things.
Okay, because this is the deal with Real America's Voice. They talk, they go out, like Ben Bergwam, he went out down to the southern border. He's the first person in America to do this. And then he had another guy named Oscar El Blue Ramirez, that they went down there and Biden wouldn't let them do like any filming at the wall. So my point is this, they go out and even through the nation, the different states and stuff, like one place they did a rally for Trump and it was a town of approximately 5,000 people and 50,000 people showed up. So all these wonderful things are going on and I just want the public to know the truth. That's all I came to do. And I'm responsible to do my part because if I don't share the word, then it's my fault when it's time for judgment. Their blood being shed to go down is on my hands. And so I have to do my part. And I appreciate if you would understand that. And I thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, we have two participants with hands up.
Oh, thank
Vicky,
you.
Vicky Eckerts has been waiting for a long time and then Shannon just popped up. So
That puts me in a family issue. We'll go with the first person first. Vicky.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, my question that I came up with when I was listening to comments before we had the last public meeting. Has there been anything said recently regarding McNeil Island and the 7 extreme sex offenders that they plan to send to Cowlitz County?
I haven't heard anything. I haven't looked into the general claim and about that the Cowlitz County is a dumping ground, and I really haven't found substantiation there. That's really all I know.
Okay, and then I have another question. You were talking about taxes and they said that as our property value goes up, the taxes go up. But if the property value goes down, do the taxes stay up?
It really depends on the kind of tax. If it's a bond payment, remember I said if it costs $100 to do the bond payment, it doesn't matter. They're going to get $100. If the property valuation of the county is at $100, then the tax rate will be $1 per dollar.
Okay.
So that would be 100%.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay. Shannon.
Hello. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you, Arn, for coming out to our summer kickoff at the HNA. It was nice to see you. Sorry I couldn't get you in the dunk tank. That would have been fun.
Head first?
Huh?
Head first?
First? Oh, I'm a nice person. Come on now. As we're sitting here and we're talking about elections and we're talking about all this stuff going on, and you mentioned the Highlands and stuff that's going on, I know that people are listening. I'm hoping there's a lot of people in the Highlands listening. Ballots are going out. And I really just want to encourage people to do their due diligence, look at what's going on, research what's, the people that are on there. I only had like 2 things to vote for on mine. So, hey, But I just really want to encourage people to vote. I really am. And if they aren't registered, they can come and see me at H&A. I have register forms. So I think I can do that. I talked to the ladies in the voter office and I filled out that form last time. I'm pretty sure it's still valid. But I just really want people to get out there instead of sitting at home. I'm not going to vote. It's not going to make a difference. The more you say it's not going to make a difference and you're not going to vote, then it doesn't. You're not making a difference yourself. So that's all I really had to say. But
I really appreciate that. And at the local level, every vote does count.
yeah, I'm a big time on vote local. Do that part. Make your voice heard. So I appreciate you letting me take that little moment there. So
Thank you. We appreciate
so maybe
it.
I can get you in the dunk tank, you and Weber in the dunk tank.
You drop us both
night
in at the
out.
same time and we'll have a big old splash and we'll get sued for flooding the neighborhood.
One at a time then. One at a time. No head first, I promise.
We'll hold you to that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
My comment is somewhat similar. I appreciated the fact that you guys brought us through the part that's so few percentage are voting for the people being elected that make the decision of how your tax dollars and the money that's collected is being used. Well, you want to say, the say has to become in who you put in those positions. And to have in the off-year election to be in the neighborhood of 20%, you said, or even less than that, is pretty sad to think then later on, you have given up your say. We have got to, as a people, take back the rights that the Constitution gave to us that says you want your freedoms. It needs to be down to the level of the people ought to make those decisions and run everything. So take that opportunity, and it's been given through the vote. So I too just want to publicly encourage people to cast your vote, get a little bit more informed, investigate who's running for the office, see who's consistent with what you think is important. I've gotten a couple phone calls that have asked me specific questions, and I appreciate that because again, I know you guys appreciate input from the public. It helps you as you make your decisions. It's not that you don't come here and you have your own opinions. But I learned something early on when I served on boards. It's not about me. It's about what's most important for that person whose board I'm representing. If it was school board, it was all about kids. It was Chamber of Commerce, it was all about what's good for the business community and on and on and on like that, So again, I know that you guys stop for a second and you look at what's best for all the people in the county, not just a small amount or not the ones that are speaking the loudest, but it's ones that are really presenting a case that's what's best for all of us, because we're in this together. But you want the best representation and you want to have those things and be part of the process. And the process starts with running for office if you want to, but beyond that, it's about voting and taking your time. And I appreciate you guys also giving the public time to comment. It says a lot. I just feel like a person has a say, and that's a refreshing thing. Just thanks.
I certainly appreciate that. I would submit a slight but very crucial modification is what happens is we're a constitution, and I see Carolyn's hand is up. Excellent. Hold on, Carolyn. We are a republic, and too many people now fall into the category of the foxes in the hen house deciding what they're gonna have for a meal. And so I think we are individually, morally, ethically obligated to vote with the big picture as opposed to what's in it for me. And we have largely lost that fundamental. It's always seems to me like, what's in it for me? Consequently, we buy the votes, and that is not a pleasant picture to see. The United States should be above what's in it for me. It's what's in it for the aggregate of my society and the future of the country. 31 trillion in debt speaks very badly for us. Anyhow, appreciate that. Mr. Weber?
We've heard the statistic that about 20% of the voters may be voting in this current primary election. I do remember being in an election when the vote total was only 8%.
Oh,
And I won. But I didn't, it was a unique situation. There were 4 positions open for city council. None of us had opposition that year. So there wasn't, there really wasn't a reason for people to get out. And sometimes that happens. But that's not happened recently because I think participation is up. The interest is up. And we very rarely have unopposed candidates. Just doesn't happen every once in a while, but I think participation levels have improved. But again, it depends on the local issues and it depends on, sometimes it depends on the weather, and people don't want to get out and even deliver the ballots. So never can tell.
so let's go to Carolyn.
I appreciate the opportunity and I don't care what you are saying in the meeting. This is free advertising and I'm glad that you're just talking about it, but I did want to clarify some questions that were just brought up about voter registration drives. If candidates or advocacy groups, parties, whomever out there registering people to vote, you 100% have the right to hand out voter registration forms or direct people to the website. Where you have risk, or I should say requirements, is when you collect those forms. I actually don't recommend people collecting the forms. And if you do, you should be signing a form with the elections office and adhering to state law. So once you collect those forms, you have a very limited time in which you can sit on those. You have a duty to turn those in within specific timelines, or you can be penalized. I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. Great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And as soon as Carolyn turns her hand off, we will have no hands. Thanks, Carolyn. We are due for a bid opening, but we have another gentleman to speak. Is that acceptable to you? Sure. Thank you.
Just have a comment on Carolyn's earlier message about urging people to vote, cast their ballot at the drop boxes provided by the county elections office. I have a good friend of mine, a neighbor, and the last election last November, he put his ballot in the mail at his mailbox at his house and was picked up by the post office, and his vote never did get counted. Because anybody can go in and check to see whose vote was counted and what the status is of their ballot, and his was somehow lost in the mail. So yeah, I would urge people to.
So when they receive ballots that are past the deadline, they're marked with the postmark. There's the canvassing board inspects them. They double check.
Yeah, his never was received by the county election office.
Oh, it was totally lost. Yeah.
Yeah, it was lost.
And there are issues too when ballots are found after the certification. Now what do you do? Yeah. Oh, Carolyn wants to chime in. Go ahead.
Oh, I appreciate you guys allowing me a little bit of time. There are a lot of questions. So something that's important to note is that each of those postal mailboxes has different collection times. So when you drop anything in a postal mailbox, it'll have what time the mailman is going to come collect those boxes. And sometimes it's only once a week. Don't take that risk with your ballot. Put it in a ballot drop box.
So if I think I'm depositing my ballot just before 8 o'clock when the polls close, chances are I've lost my vote. Is that not right?
That's absolutely correct in almost every postal mailbox, because you have to have a postal endorsement in order for that to be counted in time. And I can almost guarantee that no postal worker is working past 5 p.m. So that postal mailbox is not going to be collected. That's why I just tried to consistently advertise, please use a ballot drop box.
So the ballot drop box at 8 o'clock at closing time, and I'm standing in line and I want to drop another ballot in there and it's after 8 o'clock. I'm not standing in line. I just charge up to it. It's 8:02.
Nope.
Take it from there.
Yes, we actually have election workers that are paired up with what we call ballot box buddy, a Republican and Democratic observer. They leave at the same time after they have synced their cell phones so that they know the time is synced to a cell phone tower. They all watch at the exact time and make sure it closes at exactly 8 p.m. This happens every election. There will always be somebody that's running up to the ballot box after timelines, and even my own family have been guilty of this in the past. And they made the comment to me, really? I was only 5 minutes late. Well, where do you stop? It's 8 p.m. is in statute. We close at exactly 8 p.m. No exceptions, unless there's a line. Think of it as similar to being in the bank line. They may close at 5, but they're going to help everybody that's legitimately in line at 5 p.m. That's how the ballot box works.
Yeah, and I would add then, shame on people that they've had the ballot in their hands for how long?
18-day voting period, and we tried to mail our ballots prior to that 18-day starting point every election, at least by a day or two.
Thank you. Any other comments before we close? Thank you, everybody. Anything else, Dennis?
Nope.
We're good?
Good discussions. Thank you.
This meeting is now closed.